The cold night's darkness had settled over the farm like a heavy blanket. The deep silence of winter was filled with a chill that even the wind seemed to fear. The pig, lying in the barn, was almost motionless in the darkness. It slightly opened its eyes and looked outside. It waited like a predator lurking in the shadows, watching for its prey. As it pushed open the door, the cold air seeped through its fur. It lifted its nose and sniffed the night. All the scents of the farm were familiar: damp earth, old hay, and the remnants of animals in the barn. But now, it detected the scent of something different, something that triggered its hunger and awakened a dark desire within. Its large bulk silently glided out through the barn door. It stepped carefully on the snow that had accumulated on the ground and moved toward the house. Its eyes caught the movement of a shadow behind one of the windows. It paused for a moment, ears perked, listening to the faint sounds from inside. The old man was wandering around the house, mumbling something. He was alone. In the cold days of winter, no one came or went from the farm. The pig hesitated as it reached the front door. It was ajar. Upon entering, the cold air of the room filled its nostrils. The scent of the man's warm body triggered its instincts. A glint appeared in its eyes, the gleam of a predator seeing its prey in the dark. The old man stood in the middle of the room, unaware of the silent presence behind him. He was struggling to light the shivering stove with his weak, frost-bitten hands. The pig approached slowly, holding its breath for a moment. As the man bent down beside the stove, it seized the opportunity. It lunged forward suddenly, attacking the man from behind. Its powerful jaws clamped onto the man's leg, toppling him to the ground. The man's scream pierced the silence of the night, but was muffled by the snow beneath. The pig pressed him down with its hooves and advanced toward his throat. The man's choking cries mingled with the pig's grunts. The man's frail body struggled in a final attempt to escape, but remained motionless under the pig's weight. The light in the room slowly began to fade. The pig watched as the light in the man's eyes gradually dimmed. Then it withdrew, silently slipping out the door as if nothing had happened. The tracks it left on the snow slowly began to be covered by the falling snowflakes. The winter chill had enveloped the farmhouse in a heavy, silent blanket. Everything inside the house was in its place, but the cold and snow outside warmly embraced the residents. The elderly farmer, Mr. Adams, had been alone with the darkness and cold of winter. However, tonight, he was to host an unexpected visitor. Rachel and her children arrived at the farmhouse early in the morning. The children, tired yet curious, looked around. Rachel, who had traveled to visit her elderly father at the farm, found no response when she knocked on the door. As the daylight began to fade, they wandered around the house, trying to find her father. The front door was locked. Rachel struggled with the lock and eventually broke it open. Upon entering, the first thing she noticed was the eerie silence in the house. Everything was in its usual place, but she couldn't find any sign of her elderly father. "Is Dad here?" Rachel's voice echoed in the empty house. The children peered through the door gap, carefully examining the inside. The house had an empty refrigerator and scattered items on the floor. The cupboards, which should have contained food, were open and their contents spoiled. The children's first noticeable find was the spoiled food in the cupboards. This indicated that their father had left a long time ago. Rachel walked further into the house. The interior was in disarray, and some items were out of place. In the corner of the room were an old table and some empty boxes. "Maybe he went somewhere," Rachel said, trying to reassure her children. However, the disorder in the house suggested that her father was not there. As the children roamed around the house, Rachel began checking the rooms one by one. Everything seemed as if it had been left in chaos. In the corner of the room, she noticed some hoof-like marks under the door. Additionally, there was a pile of old, stained clothes in the corner. Rachel thought these marks might be a sign that her elderly father had been chasing something. While wandering through the house, Rachel couldn't believe her eyes. In an old corner room, she saw an open window and a door. The window was slightly ajar due to the wind. The door, on the other hand, was somehow open and filled with snow that had blown inside. This suggested that the house hadn't been used for a long time. Eventually, Rachel found a scrap of paper while exploring the house. It was a note written by her elderly father, but most of the writing was smudged. She could only read a few words: "Secret, beware." As Rachel pondered the meaning of the note, the children continued to explore the corners of the room. Suddenly, a scream was heard. One of the children had found something in the corner of the room. Rachel quickly went to them, calming the children and examining their find. Along with the hoof marks and spoiled food in the room, the children had discovered a hidden hatch in a corner. The hatch was concealed in the floor of the room, and Rachel found it closed. When they opened it, they were met with a staircase and a dark corridor. Did Dad go down here? Rachel wondered, trying to encourage her children. The children looked at Rachel anxiously, all eager to discover what lay ahead. This exploration of the dark corners of the house was both a sign of hope and danger for Rachel and her children. The closed hatch hinted that they were on the verge of discovering an old secret or a terrifying truth. Rachel and the children slowly descended the stairs from the hidden hatch. The creaking of the steps echoed in the deep silence, and the sounds of their footsteps stretched into the dark corridor. Rachel's heart raced, as these stairs might lead to potential dangers that could reveal the house's dark secrets. When they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a narrow and dark corridor. The walls of the corridor were damp and cluttered, with hanging objects casting mysterious shadows on the ceiling. Rachel warned the children to proceed cautiously along the corridor. With each step, they carefully examined the old stones covered with dirt and cobwebs. At the end of the corridor, they discovered a small door. The door was slightly ajar, and the faint light coming through it hinted at whether it was safe to enter. As Rachel opened the door and peered inside, she noticed some movements glowing in the dark. The room appeared to be an old storage space. It was cluttered, covered in dust, and filled with unused items. The old farmer's belongings and broken furniture were piled up in one corner. In one corner, some old food cans and breadcrumbs were neatly arranged, but everything was spoiled and rotten. As Rachel wandered through the room, she suddenly noticed something that caught her attention: an old notebook belonging to the elderly farmer in a corner. The pages of the notebook were scattered and some parts were torn. Rachel opened the notebook and tried to read it. However, the writing on the pages was blurred and unreadable. Only a few words were decipherable: hiding in the dark, beware. Rachel kept the notebook away from the children and turned her attention to other corners of the room. Meanwhile, the movements inside the room became even more noticeable. Her eyes spotted some hoof-like tracks on the old items. The traces around the items suggested that the pig had frequently visited this place. While Rachel was navigating through the items, a sudden noise erupted. The room became chaotic, dust flew up, and old items were displaced. The children screamed in panic, and Rachel quickly went to them, trying to calm them down. Although the cause of the disturbances in the room was unclear, a sense of danger was spreading. Rachel and the children continued to search for more clues about the pig by following the tracks in the room. They suspected that the pig might still be inside the house, and this suspicion kept them constantly on edge. Finding traces of this hidden danger in the house was becoming increasingly difficult with each passing moment. Suddenly, Rachel's eyes were drawn to a door in the corner of the room. The door was on top of an old chest, and Rachel carefully opened it. Inside, she found some old belongings of the elderly farmer and a few boxes. The boxes contained some old documents and photographs. However, among these items, she found further evidence that the pig had frequently visited this place. While trying to calm the children, Rachel continued to examine the old items. Every clue to the pig's presence revealed how deep the danger was within the house. A creature lost in the dark was continuing to return to the house and threaten Rachel and her children. After Rachel and the children finished examining the elderly farmer's storeroom, they decided to check the rest of the house. However, their instincts whispered that an unresolved danger still lurked deep within the house. The feeling of hidden danger in every corner kept them constantly on edge. While Rachel and the children were wandering through the house once more, they discovered the door to a closed room. The lock on the door looked old, but to be sure, Rachel checked it. She carefully opened the door and took a moment to catch her breath as she looked inside. The room was filled with old furniture and unused items. Behind the door, there were some hoof-like tracks on the wall. These tracks indicated that the pig had frequently visited this room. Rachel took a deep breath and stepped into the room with the children. It was a mess, and everything appeared to be piled up haphazardly. As Rachel moved among the items in the room, she found an old door in a corner. Behind the door was an old chest. Rachel opened the chest and examined its contents. The chest was filled with old clothes and broken items. However, something else inside the chest caught her attention. An old notebook that seemed to belong to the elderly farmer. Rachel carefully examined the notebook. The diary contained observations and thoughts of the elderly farmer throughout the day, but strange writing appeared in the last pages. "There is a danger in the dark. Hiding. I need to set a good trap." This sentence darkened Rachel's mood. It was clear that the farmer had not ignored this danger, but unfortunately, he had not had enough time to find a solution. Rachel closed the notebook and turned to her children, explaining what they had found. Seeing their mother's worried face, the children looked at her anxiously. "There's a danger here. We need to get out of here tonight, but first, we have to find and neutralize this danger," Rachel said. As they moved through the house, trying to follow the pig's tracks, Rachel tried to reassure the children. In one of the closed rooms, Rachel noticed something else that caught her attention. In the corner of the room was an old cage. The cage was filled with dirt, and its doors were rusty. This could have been an old trap used by the elderly farmer to deal with the pig. Rachel carefully examined the cage and found some ropes inside. These ropes might have been used to close the cage, and Rachel decided to update this trap. She planned to rearrange the cage to effectively neutralize the pig. Meanwhile, she sensed that something was wrong in the house. As the darkness slowly crept in, she realized that something was about to happen. Outside, the sound of objects moving due to the wind and the creaking of the window could be heard. Rachel and the children had to listen carefully to every sound in the house and be prepared for the possibility of the pig reappearing. Rachel made a final check of the cage and placed the children in a safe corner, preparing the trap. Now all they had to do was wait for the pig to fall into the trap. However, Rachel wondered if the trap would work against the pig's intelligence and agility. In this challenging situation where Rachel and the children would have to spend the night in the depths of the house, they tried to cope with the fear and uncertainty inside them. With each passing minute, the growing tension of the pig's possible return kept Rachel and the children constantly on alert. After Rachel and the children were sure that the trap was set, they decided to spend the night in a safe corner of the house. The cage was arranged to capture the pig. The ropes were carefully placed, and the door was reinforced. However, Rachel was concerned whether the trap would be effective enough, considering the pig's intelligence. As the night progressed, the silence in the house made Rachel uneasy. The creaking sounds from every corner of the house and the strange noises caused by the wind increased the tension. The children sat quietly and anxiously beside her, while Rachel kept her eyes open, trying to watch for any movement outside. Suddenly, a movement from the dark corners of the house caught Rachel's attention. The moment they had been waiting for had arrived. The pig had returned to the house. With her heart racing, Rachel whispered to her children, "Get ready. The trap will work." The pig entered the house quietly. The movements in the dark corners of the house showed how careful and strategic it was. Slowly approaching the trap Rachel had set, the pig's movements were deliberate and calculated. As it moved through the room, it found the cage among the old items. Rachel and the children had hidden in a corner, carefully watching what was happening. When the pig noticed the cage, it approached and began to sniff it. Rachel remained silent to avoid drawing attention, but it seemed that the pig understood that the trap was more than just a simple snare. As the pig circled the cage, it carefully examined how Rachel had arranged the ropes and the door. With a moment of distraction, the pig managed to close the cage, but then quickly started trying to open it by undoing the ropes. Rachel noticed the pig's actions and quickly warned the children. "Let's move to the back door slowly and quietly," Rachel said. Following her mother's instructions, the children began to exit the room cautiously. However, the pig's movements had spread throughout the house, continuing to explore other areas. As Rachel and the children moved to the back door, the pig's movements inside the house became more pronounced. The pig checked the cage again, investigating the ropes and arrangements inside. Rachel and the children headed to a hiding spot outside the back door. The children's fearful eyes were fixed on their mother, wondering what she would do next. Suddenly, the pig succeeded in opening the cage, and the cage doors slowly creaked open. Rachel and the children continued to watch the house from their hiding spot. The pig, having disrupted the arrangements inside the cage, began to wreak havoc in every corner of the house. The movement inside the house became increasingly violent with each passing minute. The pig knocked over everything, moved items around, and caused chaos throughout the house. Amid this turmoil, Rachel and the children approached the back door, searching for a safe place outside. Suddenly, they realized the pig was approaching. Rachel hid the children in a corner and tried to come up with a plan to prevent the trap from being destroyed. The pig was getting closer to the back door, threatening the safety of Rachel and the children. Taking a deep breath, Rachel said to the children, "Hide, I'll distract it." The children, following their mother's instructions, tried to hide. Rachel headed towards the front door to draw the pig's attention. The noises echoing inside the house showed the pig's attempts to enter. Rachel gathered all her strength as she prepared to lure the pig away from the house. Amid the chaos inside, she was anxious about what the pig would do outside. The sounds of the pig made her heart race, but she focused on carefully executing her plan. Moving quickly toward the front door of the house, Rachel tried to attract the pig's attention. Standing in front of the door, she shouted loudly and threw various objects to make noise and draw the pig's focus. The pig, initially focused on the interior, noticed Rachel's commotion and began to slowly move towards the front door. As the pig approached the front door, Rachel swiftly made her way to the back door. Meanwhile, the children stayed hidden in their corner as instructed by Rachel. The pig, annoyed by not seeing Rachel at the front, began to lash out in frustration. Rachel kept a vigilant eye on the pig's movements as she moved towards the back door. Rachel and the children exited safely through the back door and began to hide in the yard. Rachel tucked the children away in a corner and waited for the chaos inside to subside. The pig circled around the house, trying to understand what was happening inside. Once the children were safely hidden, Rachel decided to set up a trap in the garden using some old tools and materials she found. Using an old net and metal rods, she began to create a setup to prevent the pig from re-entering the house. After some time, Rachel noticed the pig heading back towards the front of the house. The pig's movements seemed to align with the trap Rachel had set up. Once she completed her preparations, She instructed the children to stay hidden and made a plan to attract the pig's attention. Rachel moved around the house, making various noises to draw the pig's attention. As the pig wandered around the house searching for Rachel and the children, it came across the trap Rachel had set. The net and metal rods were designed to immobilize the pig. The pig, distracted by Rachel's maneuvers, headed towards the area of the trap. However, its intelligence and experience allowed it to bypass the trap. The pig managed to navigate through the net and neutralize the metal rods, overcoming the setup Rachel had created. The trap had failed to contain the pig. Rachel and the children continued to hide in a secure spot while the pig circled around the house again. Rachel realized that the pig's intelligence had rendered her trap ineffective. The pig searched and inspected everything around the house, attempting to locate Rachel and the children. As Rachel kept the children safe, she observed the pig's actions. The pig's increased tension inside the house disrupted Rachel's plans. Rachel needed to come up with a new strategy to deal with the pig. Understanding that her last plan had failed, the pig became more cautious while moving around the house. Rachel decided it was time for a final attempt. Using everything at her disposal, she worked on a new strategy to keep the pig away from the house and set up a final trap to prevent its return. Rachel decided to make one final move to prevent the pig from approaching the house again. She came up with the idea of setting a trap using old household items, wooden pieces, and ropes. She needed to plan the trap very carefully to ensure it would incapacitate the pig. Using old wooden scraps, a net, and metal rods from the house, she began to create a narrow passage that the pig would have to navigate. The trap was designed to block the pig's passage, but considering the pig's intelligence, everything needed to be perfect. After instructing her children to stay in a safe place, Rachel waited for the pig to approach the house again. Meanwhile, she noticed that the pig was moving around the house, heading toward the trap Rachel had set. Rachel watched carefully to see if her plan would work. The pig noticed the trap Rachel had prepared and approached it cautiously. The trap was complex and caught the pig's attention. The wooden pieces and ropes created a maze that made passage difficult for the pig. The pig carefully examined the trap and tried to navigate through it. As the pig circled the trap Rachel had set, it suddenly knocked over part of the trap and untangled some of the ropes. Rachel realized that the trap might become ineffective and thought quickly to find a solution. Rachel rearranged part of the trap and came up with a new plan to distract the pig and draw it into the trap. She placed some old toys and items that made noise around the trap. These noises might help draw the pig's attention. While watching the pig move around the trap, Rachel told her children to hide in a corner of the room. As the pig carefully moved toward the source of the noises, Rachel began to hide close to the center of the trap. When the pig found the source of the noises, it approached the center of the trap. Thanks to the arrangement Rachel had made, the noises effectively drew the pig in. As the pig moved towards the sounds, the remaining part of the trap surrounded it. When the pig realized that the trap was becoming ineffective, Rachel had to make her final move. Using her last tool, she opened the trap's lid and allowed the pig to enter. The trap's closing mechanism was set up to ensure the pig would be incapacitated. Once the pig was inside, Rachel quickly closed the trap's lid and tightened the ropes to secure the pig inside. The pig was trapped in a confined space with no chance of escape. Rachel placed her children in a safe corner and checked if the trap was effective. As the pig struggled in the cage, Rachel's carefully prepared trap had finally achieved its goal. The pig was trapped by Rachel's clever and strategic setup and had no chance of escaping. As Rachel and the children waited by the trap, the pig's struggles slowly subsided. Rachel approached the trap to see if the pig was indeed incapacitated. After this arduous struggle, Rachel and the children took a deep breath of relief. The danger in the house was finally over. Rachel turned to her children and said, "We're safe now. We can spend the night here." The children relaxed when they saw their mother's safe return to the house. After this difficult night, Rachel and the children stayed in the house for a few more days to recover and make repairs. The danger posed by the pig was over, and Rachel believed that a peaceful life had begun with her children. However, the experience they went through would always remain a memorable part of their lives.